the purpose of the conversation is to direct the city attorney's office and the staff as to the language that we would put into an ordinance that would describe how the voting process would take place and how we would deal with various contingencies in terms of what might pass or not pass, whether it was 50% of the vote or not. We want to make sure that there's some clear rule book before we embark on the process. So this is the introduction to further conversation from yourselves. We've tried to write down what we understood the discussion to say, but it's mainly an exercise in putting it in writing to see whether it's actually what you meant, and would accept any changes, amendments, suggestions to it.
Well, from my perspective, after reading it, it lays out what we had talked about, so I don't have any.
Could you, I find number 3 a little confusing in this.
Only 3.
Yeah, well,
I find another one or two.
there's others I disagree with, but
Yes.
I want to make sure I understand what's being said in number 3, because it refers to 50% twice, but I don't think it's referring to the same 50% of what.
Okay.
And so, what is it trying to say in different words, I guess?
It's trying to deal with a situation where voter turnout in May is less than 50%. You know, under the charter, if that happens, even if a measure passes, we don't have the authority to send it on to LCDC for acknowledgement. So this says that in the event that the turnout is not greater than 50%, and presumably that could be a case where one or more of the measures actually gets more than 50% of the votes cast.
Okay, that's what, so that second one is votes cast.
Right. Then the council would refer in November the greatest vote getter.
So the words in support should be votes cast. Because
Yes.
that's the part
Yeah.
that's 50% of votes
Yeah.
in support.
Sure. That's a good clarification.
I guess my question for council, do you think we really want to ignore the will of the voters if the voters support the initiative supplied alternative? Because that's what this wording would do.
Double majority, then they get, that's their separate.
But if it gets the majority of the votes cast, what this says is we ignore that will of the votes cast and we refer only ours. And you don't think this group is going to do another initiative and put it on the ballot? We could end up with another confusing situation.
That's what it's, go ahead.
No, I mean, this is the choice of the initiative group to do this. These are the rules that we're working with. And if they don't get 50% in the May, that doesn't mean that the council automatically has to pass that on. With the initiative process, there's certain rules. I mean, they have to get a double majority. The council has expressed the will that if they do and get that in May, then that's the one we're going to work with. If they don't, we have no obligation to pass them on.
Well, technically, I think the initiative does not need to have a double majority vote. It simply needs to get a simple majority vote.
That's rewriting the charter, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, but hear me out here just a second. So when we look at point number 4, the initiative measure will be subject to the same charter provisions as the measures referred by council. Up until the vote of May, since it's an initiative, it does not require a double majority. Only if it passes and is successful, then it comes back to this council, and then in a sense of a council referral or whatever, it does need to have a double majority vote. But when I go to point number 6, if no plan receives the required double majority in May, the council referred measure with the highest number of votes in support will be on the November ballot. Why not the measure pass the citizen initiative?
I don't think council followed through with the directions that they were given, in my opinion. They've still written in stuff here. I don't see why number 4 is even in this. I still think that the direction that we gave council was to proceed with not any intention of dealing with this outlier group. It's
Yes.
up to them to just take care of their business. If they win, they win. If they don't, they need to get, we're not, so I don't know why this is even.
Well, let me explain why.
Maybe explain it,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that.
Bring the mic.
I'm sorry, I'm having something in my throat. I don't want to
When you see an ordinance from us, it will address only the council options. But in order to address that ordinance, we need to know what your answer was to the question of how do we treat the initiative. And you've told us what the answer is, and we've written what we think your answer is. We think the implication of this answer is that we will not be addressing the initiative in any way in an ordinance that you adopt. I could maybe have explained that better, and I appreciate it, but I wanted to.
I see 6 points here, which probably could have been written in one distinct direction, but if in lay terms, but in legalese, maybe you need to say it 6 times, 6 different ways. Clearly, the direction of council is direct and clear the last time. So anyway, if you got, are you reading what we wanted?
Yeah, I read this and it made sense to me, and I think it's according to what we had talked about.
I appreciate that.
I'll go back.
Looking outwards and writing it in terms that I'm glad you're writing it in terms which fit the legal requirements for this kind of write-up, as long as it ends up with the outcome that we've asked for, and that's what I'm hoping for. Very good.
I guess I still have my original question that you've conveniently avoided. And that is, if none of the 3 plans achieve the 50% voter turnout requirement, and the initiative provision forwarded through initiative gains the most votes, you feel comfortable ignoring the will of the voters as expressed that is the most popular? Because that's what this does.
I'll answer your question. First of all, if it doesn't get a 50% majority, doesn't have a 50% turnout by charter, it doesn't make the ballot. I mean, it doesn't get forwarded on. It doesn't.
That's an interpretation council has to make, and that's not the question I'm asking. You're saying by doing this, that if that gains the majority vote, but not 50% turnout, you're going to treat it differently than the ones you guys are putting forward. They should all be treated the same. If the majority of voters vote for it.
Well,
Let me back up his.
I disagree with your assessment.
Well, here it goes to my initial first question too. Point number 4 says that the council wants to treat the initiative like one of the other 2 revisions of the comprehensive plan. But then when we come to number 6, it doesn't want to treat it that way. It ignores it. And that's the point Randy, I think, is trying to make. Nothing is done by this council to at least forward it to the fall election. And secondly, I'd ask, why would we have to regather signatures? Because that's now treating it differently. And so is it being treated as an initiative, or is it being treated as a council recommended plan?
This is kind of rich to me. We had a vote in July, and the comprehensive plan did not pass. We then voted on a motion to present 2 plans to the people in May. And the majority of council agreed to that. This is part of the democratic process. Mr. DeYoung and his PAC decided to jump the rails and have an initiative. Now that...
Does have the right to do an initiative?
I'm not saying they don't. Let me finish. We're talking about... This is factual information. This is not subjective, what I'm saying.
It is not my PAC. That is not true.
All right. Let's just move on here.
Yeah.
So, Mr. DeYoung is not supporting the 2 plans on council. At least
Neither
that's...
am I.
And neither are you. Does that mean, as you made up your own rules with the brinksmanship that you pulled, that you're now looking at special rules for yourself that we make up along the way? This is a continuation of what I feel is the democratic process, which is we had a vote, comprehensive plan failed. I voted 3 times for that plan. How do we get out of that quagmire? This was a way that the council agreed, except for both of you, that we were going to move forward. This is totally within the parameters of a functioning government. You decided something else. That's okay. So what you want then is for us to accommodate you doing your own thing. And that's not what we're going to do.
And that's not what you and your supporters have done for the last 10 years?
No, that's a good
This
point.
has been a long
Hold on, Randy. Let's say that Dan Fagley put something on the ballot plan or something like that, and then he came and he wanted council to make a special provision for his plan so that it could be treated the same as the council's referral. That's the same thing.
No, we've not.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
We have never made a request, as far as I know, that our plan be treated like your 2 council plans.
Well,
We've never made that request.
I
We want it to stand as an initiative by itself, and all it requires is a simple majority vote, not a double majority vote. Any initiative, that's the case. Now, it only becomes impacting upon council restrictions and council charter restrictions in regards to getting a double majority vote if it's forwarded on to LCDC, if it should be successful. Only then would a double majority come into play. Now, in my thinking, that's okay, but the point is that number 6 then wants to treat it differently, not as a plan forwarded by the council, but as an initiative out there that is either lost and is not going forward. So I'm asking, well, which way is it? Is it to be treated like a council plan, or is it to be treated as a separate initiative? Maybe, Tim, you see the contradiction?
Yeah, but we don't have the prerogative to, we have a charter that any plan that's forwarded by council, and whether it's initiative or it's a referral, it still gets forwarded. You heard, that's been already established in previous meetings.
No, it's not.
Yes, it has.
We've talked about it, but we've made no formal motion, resolution, or whatever determining how
We're heading in that way. We're having discussion right now, and
You
there's,
just stated we'd already decided that, and I'm saying we've not decided that. That's one of the things we need to formally decide.
So the
And
only,
that's item 4 on the February 3rd agenda. We expressed our opinions, but we as a council never took an action to decide that.
well, let's move on.
well, again.
Why do we have number 4 in here? I still don't understand why you've put number 4 in here. Why are you stating what we don't do? What is the strength and purpose of initiative number 4?
We need to know the answer. We need to know how the council is going to treat the initiative. So
Okay.
what I understand the council to be saying is that the initiative would be treated in a couple of ways we've talked about. One is it's subject to the same charter provisions as the council initiated with respect to forwarding to LCDC. That's one thing I think you said. The second is that if it fails to get a double majority in May, no matter how many votes it gets, that for it to be on in November, there'd have to be yet another initiative.
Okay?
I think those are the 2 things I've heard you say.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to be clear that that's what we heard, and that was your direction before we actually drafted an ordinance. In the ordinance, we won't address that. We'll
Okay.
simply address the 2 measures that you're going
Okay,
to
well,
approve.
hearing your confirmation of what was the direction, regardless of the words that I'm seeing in front of me, which are to me a little bit legalese and confusing, then I think you're right on track and I support what you're doing and I don't know what more we need.
Well, let me go back again to the same point. If this council is going to say that the initiative is going to come under the same rules as the charter requires concerning council-sponsored plans, then it would seem to me that it, at that point, becomes a council-supported plan, at least indirectly or intrinsically. If that's the case, why isn't it a fair contestant to be put on the ballot without gathering signatures once again in November, when that election comes around?
It didn't win what it needed to win.
We're going, yeah.
You adopted it as a council
You know
plan.
what? It's getting
Maybe
contentious. We're gonna move on. It's not good.
You know, the discussion that Mr. Ware brought up was that that's the democratic process. What goes on in this room is not a democratic process, it's a republic. we're representatives. When you have the vote, that is the democratic process.
Okay,
The
well,
vote of the citizens.
thanks for the instruction. I think we need to move on. You, Mr. Ramus, you have another legal memorandum here that we would need.
That is simply the memo we prepared before your last discussion,
Okay, okay.
just included for information.
Well, we can,